two of you alone could do it. We'll wait, give Julie a couple minutes. I think she just said that she was going to.
May I leave my computer here for?
Yeah, it's maybe not a very stable spot. Maybe over here, would that be better?
It's fine. Because
I want somebody to knock it over.
Okay. Got it.
All I have to do is breathe. He said, I need to leave a little early to head for a meeting over at City. But she's going to be here. So, we'll give Julie a minute to get over here if she doesn't think it wants to without her. Because the main job today is going to be academic. I want to look at curriculum because I can bring back what happened at the other meeting and pull the two together. Cool. Yeah, because I mean, we have one group of people planning, but no faculty there except for counselors. Okay, so they're not. It doesn't mean they're not capable, but they don't know anything about 104, and then we don't know anything about the counseling piece. So I think maybe we'll let them do their piece and we'll do our piece and see if we can. But I'm good, since I'm the common person as well as Adriana, we'll bring back. She let me know today she couldn't make it because we changed the date. I said no. I'm not going to change it now. You folks are flying over from other places and stuff like that. No. We go on and we'll keep recording, whatever. And if you're recording, then we can actually let her watch the report.
I am recording this. So it could be available on for others.
Nice.
I know. Teach online and you have to.
Well, as soon as he came over, he said that he was already teaching online. I was like, oh boy, we had at that point I think only Steve and Keenan were the only ones teaching online after that point. So yeah, that was a draw. Let me get one more try.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm alright. And you?
I'm alright too. Are you still at Brooklyn? Are you still at that place?
No, I don't want to bring your chairs. I've been there, but no.
Wow, what a commute.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the core here. As I mentioned to these folks, we are missing Stravny. She hurt her knee, so she's not here today. I didn't read the whole email, so I just saw very quickly. I can give you details. We are missing Renee because I was not able to pull together getting her sub, but I think we might alternate Tuesday and Thursday, so that way we'll be able to some of the time. And a lot of this, I think, after today, you'll be able to do offline as well. I don't think we take up time. So I think you'll see where I'm trying to go with it. And who else? Adriana couldn't be here. She had another engagement, but again, I'll bring back what we discussed at the other meeting, and then I think you'll see. I don't think I need to tell you because we are where we need to go. And Julie's supposedly coming, so that's her seat. Here she is. She's right here.
She's early for the other meeting at.
It's early, but she's here. Excellent. I understand. That's fine. We value you while you're here. And we value you when you got too, but we appreciate you here at all. Because sometimes we're in a rush to go somewhere else. So I appreciate that. So basically, at the other meeting, there are
recording for others.
Yeah.
He's having to see myself.
It is.
I'm gonna try not to look.
I picked a spot right with my back to the machine. The other meeting, there are two groups running. The other group is more interested in just Summer Bridge in general, and then we're largely, I wouldn't say that they're non-academic, but we're the language arts division. Let's face it, we're looking at the English. And so
can I just ask if that's two different tracks, or it's like we're going to be within the other?
Well, that's where I'm
the question.
going.
Okay,
sorry. Okay, it's a great question. So what they proposed, and again, there's nothing in stone yet, but I think it makes perfect sense. They proposed that we have not too many classes, because you try to get students too many classes in the summer, they're going to fail. You're setting them up for failure. I mean, too many classes simultaneously, during taking 2 courses or 3 courses during the summer, math and English, could blow them out of the water. That's not what we're trying to do. So they proposed English 104 as the logical course. And I think that makes perfect sense because it's the course that is keeping them from going into 1A. So it's at the gate. but it's also the course that most of our students need. More students need 104 than 330. As a course that we know how to teach very well already. Of course, we know how to teach 330 very well also, but it certainly makes sense. So they're thinking a 104 class and a counseling class. The counseling class 1-2 credits. I think they said that they had proposed a 2-credit class to be able to start as early as this summer. Which
this sounds very familiar with the other programs at other 2-3 community colleges.
Sure. And that class would give them study skills, what you need to succeed in college, that kind of thing.
I'm sorry, can I just ask who's in the other group? Is it get counseling?
It's mostly counselors.
Yeah.
There's mostly counselors. Adriana leads it. I'm trying to think. Laura Garcia was there. There was a person I never met was there. You weren't there, were you? Was another, at least 1 or 2 more counselors. There were no non-counseling faculty there. But again, I think the counselors have a very good feel for what
And
this
there was
is.
other student services people? Or
There was one person whom I didn't recognize. Everybody else was a counselor.
Yeah, okay, it's mostly counseling. Okay.
So, first of all, my friend, here's the structure of what I'm looking at today, and then we'll go back and do it. Okay, so first I'd like to collect your thoughts on 104. Is that the appropriate course? Is that where we want to aim? And then 2, if we do decide to go with 104, we already have a summer on 104. How is this going to be different? Because if it's the same thing, then we can go home. But the goal is to provide something different, not curricularly, because the curriculum's set. But what else can we provide? How else can we deliver it so that it's different? If it's exactly the same thing, then we're done. But if we're going to be doing something special for the Bridge program, then what's that going to look like? And then
I'm
3.
sorry, interrupted.
Please, you're not interrupting. Just jump in. It's not interrupting. It's jumping in.
The subject line for the meeting was like, I think, San Jose Promise Summer Bridge program.
It is
So
to
it
the
is
San Jose Promise
specifically for
students.
San Jose Promise
Correct.
students. Okay, so just to be clear.
Absolutely correct.
And the 104s that we have in the summer, we have regular 104s, and then we have like the affirm.
We have an affirm 104,
and
330
Rase,
combination.
One or no in the summer? Do we also
No, we
offer
haven't
Rase?
offered in the summer. I'll have to go back and look.
And my one other question is, because the only summer 104 I did was with the San Jose State, and so that did include the lab altogether.
Mhm.
But is the regular one on this campus also that the regular instructor teaches the lab?
Correct.
Yes, it's not the system that we have during the regular school year. Okay.
But they do take a final.
Yeah, of course. Everybody has
Well,
to.
the final, but I mean the same system for the final.
Yeah.
Much smaller, obviously.
Would these students have to take a lab as well, a lab component?
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Is that in the summer, it's all folded in.
It's
So the
all
same
in,
instructor teaches it, it's just extra hours with the same instructor. And so it's not the same format going to
I
a separate
see.
space. And I think the instructor can figure out whether they want to alternate days or have part of the day or whatever. You have more hours total with the students, and then you can figure out how
How you structured? Did you use the lab modules, the ones we have in the
some, and I did my own thing, some. But
Okay.
I've only done it in the summer at San Jose State. So that was also a different student population, but maybe somewhat more like San Jose Promise. I don't know.
We don't
They
know
were-
exactly who we have at
Yeah.
San Jose Promise
Yeah.
yet. We're waiting to see test results. And then at the end of the year, I want to collect some anecdotal evidence, but I didn't want to push it all semester saying, how are they different? Because I didn't want to push the fact that they might be different.
Well,
We want to
had
assume that they're the same, and then if they are, then we need to address those problems. But to go in saying these are different, immediately that's going to set people up for, and they're not as good. And I don't want that. I didn't want that to be the attitude. It may turn out to be the case, but
we had
our
this real
conversation
conversation
suggested
because
that
I
it
had no idea there were very few students in my 104 class who had identified themselves to me as San Jose Promise students who were struggling a lot. But when I talked with Meryl, it turned out I had many more San Jose Promise students than I realized, and it's the whole range from the top student in the class to the really struggling students. So it's definitely the usual range.
I think, right, they should mirror our general population. The only difference is they're younger because they are recent graduates from one of the San campuses. And they come from
from possibly a low-income background.
Are they first-year college students as well?
Yes. And in some ways, this is the target population because the way the state sees it, because they can come in with the bridge support, these students technically should be able to finish within a 2-year timeframe to reach their goals. So actually, this population is being set up for success.
Absolutely.
So,
and thank you for pointing that out, because again, that's what we want to look at as we go through and answer the questions that we're looking at. Because how do we ensure that they can be successful? Because that's our main goal. And again, I was trying very hard not to do any comparisons that might lead people to believe that they were somehow less prepared, less good, less anything. I didn't want to, so that's why I have not broached the subject all semester long. Not because I'm not curious. I'm curious as all heck, but I want faculty to just go on as they normally do, and then we can look back and say, we see these differences or those differences. But I want people with a microscope looking for those to start with, because they're just like our students. They are our students. They're taken from the same population. Your point about them being younger is well taken. The only other difference might be that they were recruited late this year. And so they might be people perhaps with less direction in terms of where am I going. But again, maybe not. We don't know that that's true. And I didn't want to start people thinking that that was the case. So I haven't brought that up anywhere, because we don't want to think of them as somehow a negative group. This is as good as any other group we would have.
Sorry, Ben, your question was whether they were first-time college students, not first generation, but first time
Yeah.
going to college.
And they would be. It would be, because to be San Jose Promise, you have to be within a year of graduating from high school. They have to be younger than 19 or younger, I believe. So I don't know how many more times they could have gone to college before that, unless, of course, they went during high school. They might have taken classes in high school. That's certainly possible.
so this is almost like our pilot guided pathways cohort, because this group will have the counseling support right on the front end. I believe there's a career exploration component to that. So you're right, they're a younger population that may need a little bit more guidance in selecting a major and course of study. And then they'll have the additional counseling support right at the beginning. So hopefully they'll have a clear, abbreviated ed plan by the time they start in the fall.
And really the ideal time to bring students in is in the summer. I mean, if you can do that, you're doing basically a boot camp. That's what we're doing. And I don't like the word boot camp. It sounds so military, but militaristic. But nevertheless, I mean, you're having the opportunity to take these students, dust them off, teach them whatever they need to know to be successful. And you've got them for additional time before they have to hit the ground running. Because they still have to take one class, but you're not clobbering them like you do in the fall with 4 classes and, not knowing where they're going. And this way they kind of settle in before the school year starts. And again, we talk about in pathways, we talk about scaling. Whatever we find that works here, the goal is to scale it up so that we'll have the same thing. Hopefully it doesn't cost a lot. And certainly we don't want to plan anything that's going to cost a lot of money, because, we want something that's sustainable. If we come up with something and it really works and it costs $1 million, then maybe we have $1 million now, but we're not going to forever. So we want to keep it modest, is what I'm saying.
But I do think that the concepts are really about redirecting resources that we have, right? I mean, we have counseling and we have whatever, so maybe that's too optimistic.
Well, one of the things that was suggested at the meeting, the other meeting that we had, was having someone bring back learning communities. And learning communities do take some money. But it's a nominal amount of money. So, but what I'm saying is I just don't want us to get so excited about something that looks absolutely amazing, but it costs a lot. If it's a nominal amount of money, then I think we'll be able to handle it for now. And, when you think about learning communities, depending on how you do them, here I understand they were done so that people attended each other's classes, which is ideal. But if you've been in a learning community for a while, you don't necessarily have to attend, be paid to attend each other's classes, but maybe for a couple of meetings during the semester to reorganize, pull things together, and so on. So I think that even learning communities can be kept pretty modest. And everywhere I've gone, I've seen them be very successful. So that's certainly something we could look at. Anyway, so question number 1 is, do you think that 104 is where we should be aiming? and you're the English people, I zip it at this point. What's your take on it?
There's a lot of movement recently to eliminate the lower level. So one of us could be, to match the acceleration model. So it is replaced.
I would agree, and I think it would be probably a good starting point to pilot just to see what happens. And if it's not the most ideal course, I guess we could change things next summer. But I think for a starting point, a wise idea.
Well, it's often referred to as a gateway course, and I think this state is really interested in seeing, because this is the largest kind of median population. I don't know if any of you attended the guided pathways retreat. Remember how he was talking about that middle group that we can help with the support? That group was about 70 to 80%. Like the bottom 10, we can't, whatever we do, we can't help them. The top 10 will succeed regardless of what we do. So this is that middle group where it's attainable, and can they make it within 2 years with our support? I mean, that's the theory, right? But this pilot will tell us if, even with all the proper support, is it the student or are we doing everything in our power to help them succeed?
So it sounds like we're in agreement. Onward. Okay, so question number 2. I assume that would be because you can see I went on moving along that logic. So how do we enhance the class? And I'm talking enhancement. I'm not talking about changing the curriculum or anything else because the curriculum is set. But how do we enhance the class? So it's different. I mean, they could just go in and take 104. So how will this be different so that we are giving them the kind of support that we want? And that could be support in counseling. Do we bring counselors into the class? Do we bring tutors into the class? Do we have co-curricular activities? This is where you're on board yet. Because this is where we need the academics in that field to say, what can we do to make it different for a traditional model form? We already have one of those.
I mean, that seems like the natural thing would be to integrate, because those particular students I'm talking about who struggle so much. It's like I was just about to walk them to the tutoring center. William has come to our class, but it's amazing how that's still not quite enough for some of the students who need it the most.
So then we need to place embedded tutors.
Yeah, maybe embedded tutors. Yeah, I mean, in this case, I know that this is
William,
to get the embedded.
William, this is his new thing, his new baby, so to speak. So he's really excited and gung ho about it. So I think it would be on board.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure this is something he's been interested in doing. Previously, when I first came here, not many people were interested in the embedded tutors. So that's grown over the years. William has really pushed it, and he's talked to people. He's talked to people and tried to build it and help them understand. Because I think the hardest part about embedded tutors is how to use them.
Yeah.
Particularly for people who lecture a lot. And I haven't seen your class in a long time, but in your classes I've been there very recently. I know you don't lecture a lot, so it would be very easy for you to incorporate that. But think about somebody who lectures for 60, 70% of the class. What's the tutor doing? Except for there is a supplemental instruction model where they might then, help after that. But basically, a large portion of their time is just spent sitting there. Whereas if you have a very active classroom where students are doing things, the embedded tutor is easy to understand. So it depends on what teaching techniques you use, how you would understand how to use embedded tutors.
But from a past experience at another institution where we had that, I think it can be helpful to have both the inside the class and the outside the class.
No, we'll still have the outside.
I can't do everything.
Right.
It's because it's limited, because there's some time that the instructor needs to have the whole class, right?
So I'll make sure I put down that's to supplement regular tutoring. I assume that, but let's write it, make it very clear.
I mean,
assumptions.
hopefully, if it could be the same person, who's both inside the class and outside the class, because then they carry the understanding of what the assignments are and what the
and that's actually the
and
supplemental instruction model.
That's what they really need, is somebody who can translate.
They bridge.
I think William does that. We had a tutor in English 341 last semester. I had a 341. We had a tutor named Alyssa, and she would have hours just for our class. So students from our class could ask her schedule. She would be in the tutoring center, and then she would be available just for the 341 students, and they used to go and see her.
That's
But,
the
but
SI.
she wasn't also coming to your class. She was also coming to your class.
She was in our
Yeah,
class as
that's,
well.
that's
Yeah.
the ideal.
Yeah.
That is the ideal.
That's the SI model, and so, yeah, okay.
And the next step beyond that, to prepare those tutors, so some colleges have a model where the students have ongoing training.
Yeah.
And they can receive credit for that too. That would be ideal.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great investment funding too.
If we go SI, then that's sort of required, because SI requires it. You can't just assume that people know how to do that. Supplemental instruction. Yes.
Yeah, that seems good. And that's such a win-win-win situation for everybody. You're saying they get extra training and credit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, that's it.
At Gavilan, they have the SI model going on, and what I understand, the SIs and the embedded tutors are, they are paid through a grant.
We could even pay them through federal work study.
Oh, okay. Well, that must be it.
Typically, they're paid a little bit more, just because they're expected to do a little bit more. They're expected to prepare materials for the students. So they're not just tutors, but they're leaders. So they may come to the session in the library with some materials already based on what they've seen and what they understand the students need.
Yeah.
So typically they're paid more, but again, that is something that I don't want to get too involved in, because first of all, it's not my money, and second of all, I want it to be sustainable. And anything that we do, if we can't continue to do it after this is over, we did great stuff at 30 students, and then that's, oh, by the way, we didn't talk about how many students, so we'll add that on, because I'm hearing different numbers, and I want to hear your recommendation. But let's continue on the tutoring. Anything else on tutoring that we want to outline? Can I assume that as an instructor, you would want to help vet the person that's going to be in your classroom?
Yes, that's true.
Because I know William does vet the tutors in general with the faculty, but if somebody's teaching in this program, I'd like to think they had an SI leader or a better tutor that they've worked with, or that they feel that they can work with, because we don't want to just shove somebody at you, especially this summer when we're just trying it out. So
They have opportunities to meet.
that's part of actually the SI model, the faculty and the tutor meet, and they're like a team. It's not just somebody who works in a classroom, but it's like a team.
So I would bet also the William would be good at matching.
I bet you
Matchmaking.
would. I bet you're right. So is there anything else that we would like to see done with that 104, again, to ensure student success, or at least encourage, okay, it's guaranteed.
I have a question about the other class, the counseling class. Is that class going to provide the in-class workshops, or like bringing in other resources for like UPS, or they will bring in workshops? For
As I understand it, that class will involve bringing in speakers, speaking to the various areas such as financial aid, money management, and so on. But there's nothing to preclude them from coming in and doing work also in the English class, except to the extent that this is already an abbreviated class, and we don't want to be stepping on the toes of the English instructors trying to get all this stuff in.
Right.
So again, this is where we need the expertise from the faculty. Is that something that you want to have happen, or do you want it to stay in the counseling side?
Well, so this is kind of anecdotal, but the person that I was sitting next to at the Guided Pathways meeting in Oakland, who'd been teaching at San Francisco State, where they had a very integrated program like this, and they have had math and English and the counseling and everything. So it was a very quick conversation, but I think that it was kind of integrated that way, and it seems like there are just advantages to, even though, right, it's an abbreviated class, it's only 6 weeks, but when you have the lab also, I think there is some space, and I think it helps them integrate the stuff in their minds if it's not so separate. I don't know. Anyway, I'd be happy to talk with her some more. The new Cindy Quinn, she's
Sure.
new instructor.
Let's throw that in and then we can work on
Because
it.
it sounded like it was very, very successful. You know, she worked very, very successful. And so, not that necessarily you would take up so much of the class, but maybe to have some overlap, you know, just so that they know, like, that's part of being a good student, is to know how you can finance this project, you know?
Sure.
So the recursive nature of learning kicks in as well with integration. And so I would support that idea to have some overlaps. And I don't think it's redundant to have, say, different people from financial aids come in. One person at the counseling class and then another person at this English class. So then, you know, we have layers of information. It's not just one for one person in particular from financial aid, for example.
Well,
Reinforcing resources.
Yeah, and reinforcing resources.
well, there's nothing to stop it from becoming also an English assignment. So should
That's right.
students,
That could be a learning assignment.
how should students plan ahead in order to be successful in college?
Yes.
Could then,
Mm.
they could have a thesis that, I mean, it could very well be something that could be highly integrated as opposed to just redundant, which is good, but I think highly integrated is even better. But again,
And then they can get like the details of filling out the applications or whatever in a separate thing. But like the conceptual, why you need to know about this and stuff like that. Yeah.
okay, so we'll look at integrated model, and I think that may take more than the time we have here today, but at least to start thinking about it and any information you collect
Yeah,
regarding
I will
how it's
do
done
that.
elsewhere. The group was hesitant to bring on math, counseling, and English for the
Yeah,
first summer,
yeah, no, I agree.
but at some point that
Yeah.
might be appropriate.
No, and I think she was talking about during the regular school year, not during the summer. But just it was more the idea of having the counseling some overlap, you know, so that it wasn't just like a separate do that there, do that there. Because I think that's also part of the guided pathways, you know, conception, right, is to, you know, make it a more integrated experience because it's just easier to understand, I think, you know, I mean, just,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Anything else? I put in some thoughts that I had considered, but again, it may be too much for the first year. You know, if we overdo it, then it may make it worse rather than better. But I thought about, they would talk about some extracurricular activities. I said, why not some co-curricular activities?
So what's the difference?
Oh, extracurricular would be like a volleyball game
Oh, okay.
where there's no academic component.
Okay.
Or rather, a co-curricular would be more like a debate
Mm.
regarding a topic that you discussed in your English class,
So it's
or
like collaboration between the two.
or even if you're doing a social justice issue, then you know going out to the community that
Field
you're talking
trip,
about, a field
yeah.
trip or something, or if you're reading the House on Mango Street, then going out to the play that's being performed, or you know anything like that that's connected, highly connected to the curriculum, but sort of adjacent to, but not full. It's fun. It's a fun activity, but it's incorporated in the curriculum. And that's how I perceive the difference. Or a thematic approach is another thing I thought about that might, you know, again, help students to grab onto the material, because some of the material that they read in college is just a little ethereal for them. And so, you know, if there were thematic, these are just things I'm throwing out. So any other thoughts about what, so far we've got embedded tutors within kind of an SI model, an integrated model, integrating counseling and English. Want to make sure I'm putting in what's integrated. Anything else that you feel would help make this distinct from 104, better than 104 regular summer school?
A lot of 104 students right now during the rest of the semester complain about to me, they reflect back on how the lab 3 hours seem to be too long. During the summer, all we have I mean, it's integrated, right, into class, so then that would deal with that. Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
at least for the summer.
For the summer, so that would be a difference.
Except for it would look to them, it would look like a very long class
Oh, yeah.
because it's going to be, if the class is now an hour and 20 and an hour and 20, because they meet twice a week right now, an hour and 20 So it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's gonna be 2 hours and 40 minutes every day plus more, because this is 6 weeks, so it's less than half of the time. So it's gonna be probably about an hour and 40 plus an hour and 40. So it's gonna look like a very long class to them. Now it could be. Do you suggest?
I mean, it's
Well, we could model it. Do we give them a break and take the counseling in the middle?
Oh yeah.
Or you can't
Mhm.
really alternate days in the summer because there's just not
That's
enough days. I don't know if
Different
that would,
scheduling.
sometimes I think maybe that would actually take them off the subject and then back on again, but maybe we clear the heads, I don't know.
That seems to be better than just sitting through the whole day, or within one subject. So that at least that schedule seems.
How many
Well,
days a week would that be?
It's gonna be 4 or 5.
Yeah, they need some time
And
in between
yeah.
to digest the material.
Yeah, it could be just too much if it's just one solid block of just English.
It's an hour 20 plus an hour 20 is 240, plus it's gonna be longer, that's about 3
Yeah, I mean,
hours.
I think it was 2 summers ago that I did the thing, that integrated thing at San Jose State, but I think it's like 4 hours, 4 days a week, like 12 to 4.
Wow.
I was looking at other models where they did that intensive block session, but then the class would only last 1 to 2 weeks, and then they go on to the math. So they were
Oh.
shorter courses that don't match the credit system. And another component of some successful college models is they have close coordination with the counselor.
Mhm.
So once they do a non-credit bridge, so if that student is successful, there's close coordination between the instructor and the counselor to say, hey, the student is ready for 1A. Let's have the student repeat, an additional 2 weeks of the writing lab set. That's going to be the non-credit bridge. So there's different ways to structure it. We don't have to mirror it to the credit system we have now. Because, they don't need that credit to transfer to a 4-year college. So there's creative ways in how we can redesign this.
And we're talking for the future about perhaps creating some non-credit classes. For right now, though, given the timeline, I think we're gonna have to go with something a little more traditional. But that doesn't mean that in the future we can, and certainly we might wanna look at 330 at some point and see if we can do that model for a few weeks and then bounce them into the 104 in the summer. So again,
Oh.
we're speeding it up.
The way that you could implement it right away too is to develop a non-credit workshop, which some colleges have done, and that's not non-credit grant funding, so it doesn't require a credit course in curriculum. But you can use basic skills funding for that. You can develop a non-credit bridge workshop. That's what Enlace does that. They do that with their math program, so it's not necessarily a course that the student gets credit for, but they master a certain amount of material, and then they qualify for Math 111 or Math 13, right? So just things to think about if you have a more advanced group maybe that requires less. That also has to do with how the students are assessed prior to entering specific pathways. We may have a slightly more advanced accelerated pathway, or we may have a pathway that's that mirrors the credit system.
It seems like with the English, I've got to say the writing skills, it's kind of substantial, and I think that just my first hit off of what you're saying is that it will be so beneficial for them to have the full academic thing, because the writing is so important and they've got to go to all these upper levels. And so I think it's, for most students, maybe not all of them, that they really need all that. The expectations are so different in college from in high school. And anyway, yeah, this is my
If we
first
could
take.
somehow identify the students that are borderline, I think that might make more sense. So if we've got 330 students who are very high, almost in 104, but not quite, it might work for them. The students that are in 104, but almost in 1A, but right now I don't know that we have the tools to separate those people out. At some point, I'd like to think we will.
But I think the majority fall into the category of really needing.
I think they are, because they're looking at multiple measures, so they're looking at the students holistically. They're looking at the 4 years on that transcript. You may have a group that had A's every semester in English for the 4 years. That group would be different than those that are barely passing with a D or a C over the 4 years. So I think they can do that now.
I think they could, but I don't think they are yet. Let's put it
Right.
that way.
Well,
Because
yes.
they're new to multiple measures, not because they're not good, just because they're new to multiple measures, and so we don't know. I mean, it takes long enough to do what they're doing, and then add on.
It'd be great to
Who's
have
the they?
Counselors.
The research? Oh, no.
It'd be great for the counselors to meet developing the course so that the course meets the needs of those students that they have.
Put that there.
That's very good,
nice.
yeah.
I like it.
Our
Related to guided pathways too, I think it will make the pathways so much clearer.
Gavlin, the English department, and the counseling department do not talk to each other. That's the thing.
Are they both
Counseling
faculty
and-
there?
And the English department. Sorry.
Are the counselors also faculty over there like
Yeah.
ours are?
Mhm.
Wow.
They don't
So
talk. to each other.
faculty don't talk to faculty? Wow.
Yeah, they have this thing, this weird thing going on. So I hope that's not happening in that.
Well, we work very hard to maintain good relations.
Oh, good.
There have been years, my first year here, there was some people reported some shaky stuff, but on the whole, I think we do well.
Oh, great.
I think we work hard to make sure that works because you can't have people working against each other in college. I mean,
I don't know.
we've got too much to do.
It would
This
help
is
the
fine.
instructor too, by getting a more,
Mhm.
as close to homogeneous group as we can get. It will help those students.
Absolutely. And if they're working, again, anytime you have two people working together to accomplish something, it's going to go better because they're on the same pathway.
Does given diagnostic test qualify? I mean, would that meet the need of identifying the borderline student?
We are currently using AccuPlacer only minimally, as I understand it. They've been using primarily their GPA. Unfortunately, and this just came out, and I'm not surprised. Somebody said something about students who have IEPs are not identified in any way on their transcript because we don't want to discriminate against disabled students. However, if they take a class that says English for special purposes, and we think that's a regular English class, and then they come in, they've got an A in a special needs English class, then we're doing them absolutely no good by throwing them into 1A because we thought they were very good and strong students. And so we're going to have to learn how to decipher those transcripts a little bit better. We can't change the law. The law says that we're not going to discriminate against students, and we don't automatically announce, and they don't necessarily self-announce. And so they come in, and this is troubling because we want them to be successful. We're not trying to discriminate against them, but for goodness sakes, we want to be like me. And the counselors are not able at this time to know every school's name for a developmental English class. Everyone's got different. So is there anything else that you see happening? So far, again, we've got embedded tutor / SI, supplemental instruction, an integrated model with the counseling into English, focus faculty meetings between faculty, academic faculty, and counselors before the program. Anything else that you think would enhance the program so that students have a better chance
I
to be
would like
successful?
to vote for your idea of alternating the schedule. So that, I mean, would that be
So do
okay?
English, counseling, English?
Yeah, sort of like
Yeah,
that, because if not, then it wouldn't be too daunting.
And it's the same amount of time, so
Right.
I assume they'll all be in the same building or same two buildings, so it's not going to be, that they're walking all over the place. Although it wouldn't kill them either, it'll exercise.
Yeah, to get out, get some fresh
Yeah,
air. I mean,
and it wouldn't kill them.
Just getting out of your seat and
Yeah,
going to
exactly.
a new classroom and maybe just changing
Yeah,
the
it wouldn't
environment a
kill
little
them
bit.
either.
I think that's fair.
Good. Anything else that you think would be
I mean, the
beneficial?
only thing I'll say about that is that my English faculty, because I guess it's maybe only one person teaching, people want to have a more consolidated schedule, but that's the whole thing is we're serving the students, but I mean, that's part of the Guided Pathways thing, like who are we, working the schedules around the faculty needs or not the student needs? But I'm just mentioning that
No,
that could
absolutely.
be
And what will
something that the
happen
faculty
is,
person wants
as
to.
I identify the person who's going to teach the course, these are the kinds of things I'm going to have to put to them and say, can you live with this decision? This is it. Can you live with meeting with counselors first? Can you live, it's got to be somebody who can go with this flow here.
Wait a minute. You mentioned earlier that you will say you will get to the number of Nancy Promise students. Before I heard 302, and that number has reduced.
Oh, no. They're talking about 30 students, but I
Oh,
said no
sorry.
because 30 because our classes are capped at 30. They would do 44 for the math class, but they're thinking very seriously of doing English. So 30, or we could do 2 sections with 60 and then flip-flop them around here. That could be done. But again, we want to make sure it's something where we can be effective. So we don't want to do 300 and then just kind of throw them out
Ah.
there, because that's definitely not what we want to do. So what are your thoughts about the ideal number of students?
I would say not more than 30. I think more than 30, it would be difficult to grade essays
no.
and give feedback.
No, it's still only 30 in a section, but whether to have 2 sections.
Oh, 2
Oh.
sections.
That's
Okay.
the question. Yeah, no, they can't raise
Yeah,
the number of
okay.
students.
No,
So
you can't
that's a union rule. You know,
That's right.
that's a-
That's right.
And more than one section.
Yeah, try at least 2
Okay.
sections.
2
because
sections.
It seems like it could be interesting
there's
to different approaches or something, you know. Yeah, slightly.
Yeah.
You don't have to do.
What about the
Do you
idea?
think it's hard to do too?
I'm actually very much in favor of 2. I tried to keep my mouth out of it for a while.
I couldn't tell what the.
There's a reason I support 2, and that is that part of what they do in the summer is socialization. And you're stuck with the same group of 30 people. I mean, 30 people is a good number, but it's not helping them reach out to other people.
Yeah.
And so there could be an us and them. You could set it up for volleyball games or for activities where it's us against them, but not anything real. You know, I do anything. We're killing them us versus them. Yeah.
Last meeting, Renee brought up the team teaching. Is that even feasible?
Team
for-
teaching and learning communities. Again, we're writing the book right now. If it's possible, we'll do it. If it's not possible, we won't do it.
I experienced, this team teaching with Cecily for that bridge class that we taught together, and it went really well because we were able to share our ideas, and all of us taught the same group of students, but we had our own focus, right? So she focused on listening and speaking, and I focused on writing and reading. So, but then we taught the same group of students, and
You could do that with the lab in the class also if you want,
it was wonderful.
or the same instructor, either way.
Cecily and
That would be a
I
possibility.
are really we work well together, professionally, and I thought that I learned from her a lot. Just, having that.
Where was that? Again?
It was at Case through West Valley. It was at Campbell Adult Tech.
How large was your class?
We taught it 2 semesters, and the first time we had 20, and the second time we had 15.
Did they stagger your teaching, or were you both co-teaching at the same time?
Oh, you didn't? No, we had our own separate nights. So I would take the first two nights, and then she would take the second 2 nights. And the class went from Monday through Thursday.
That you and she were coordinating about
We were,
material.
we share materials,
Yeah,
we coordinate,
Yeah.
and we make the workshops happen. We brought all the departments in, and we brought guest speakers, and we brought the students to the campus to show them the resources around. We had tours, we had student
Yeah, that's
panels.
helpful. Just the tour is helpful. It's
Just
true.
put tours on
Yeah.
there. Again, the
Where
tours
are
don't have
they?
to be, they could be co-curricular again. They could be part of or outside of, but just, let's put it down. So that would certainly be a possibility if we had 2 sections, because then they could switch off, or even the one instructor could do the class, the other one could do the lab, and then flip-flop. I mean, that would leave that flexibility. We don't have to mandate it, but we could certainly put it in as a possibility. And again, we need somebody who can be flexible. So we're saying 60 students, and preferably less. And that's the other thing we could do here. We could say 25.
Oh, 25
Okay,
was better.
We could say it. I don't promise it's going to happen, but if we don't say it, I guarantee it won't.
I like to do one-on-one conferencing. If other instructors do one-on-one conferencing, works a lot much better for the students. If we can have the time to sit down with them to give feedback, write real-time feedback, one-on-one. And that takes a lot of time for 30 students, so that's not a good, realistic situation for 30 or 25, but we gotta do what we
Yeah,
gotta
25
do.
isn't
But
a good either.
definitely much more feasible within a block.
Oh, that's
area.
true too,
It's
yeah.
a good, great use of time. They can work through feedback. They have class time to do work while
Mhm.
you're watching.
Yeah.
So
That's
do we
Bill
want
Silver
to,
does.
do we want to propose a smaller number? I
Can't-
don't guarantee
can't-
it'll
can't
happen.
hurt
but-
to ask, you know?
Yeah.
And what number would you like that to be? 7?
Natural attrition, right? Well,
Yeah,
okay.
that's the thing, is the
Oh.
attrition, right? 'Cause because that does.
We're gonna make this so much fun, we're not gonna lose it. This is gonna be such a wonderful summer.
So, I would propose 25 just to echo your, I don't know. Is that too much to ask or?
Doesn't cost anything to ask.
Doesn't hurt to ask. I think the students would benefit.
Personally, I think that if this were amazingly successful, we could use that argument. Oh, I can't say we because I'm supposed to be on the other side of the house. You could use the argument. Supposed to be. Look, I was an English teacher for many years. Okay, I know I taught middle school English, but even there, 30 students in a class
It's very
was
hard.
it just made it impossible to give them the kind of feedback that you wanted to give them, and then we'd have up to 160 a day. You know, how would you possibly do that? And so you could use the argument with the union that needs to be lower.
I would ask for the 25 so we can see if there's a difference. Right now, they make the argument, they said it's based on research, that class size will not affect student success. They said the teacher is the #1 factor.
That's
But
not
as
true.
a former English teacher too, I would argue that a smaller class size makes it definitely more manageable for kids. A quality feedback on the writing assignments where students struggle.
Yeah.
And
And
again,
English is just to me, much more intense than math. I know that they're different, but for the grading for math, you can just have an answer key.
you do the Scantron.
Scantron is
Scantron.
always
Black
like
and
looking
white.
longingly at the Scantron.
It's funny because I see people parade through here all the time to the Scantron machine, and only I think once or twice have I ever seen somebody from our division actually use that Scantron machine. It just isn't.
Doesn't work that way.
It doesn't fit what we do.
We hope so, but
So-
it doesn't work.
Okay, so I'm going to say 25. Propose a 25 cap, and then 50 students total in the program, and then they say 30 cap and 60 students in the program altogether in the summer.
You're probably getting to this now, but what is the timing for the things that need to happen? I mean, in order for this to happen this summer, we're getting the ideas of what it should look like and what are the things that have to happen.
Truthfully, there's very little that you've
Less than-
proposed. I proposed some of the other things I mentioned actually would have taken longer, but what you proposed does not really require a whole lot of additional planning. The embedded tutors will come from William, and he will be able to train them in SI or whatever model we want to use. An integrated model between counselors and the English faculty would require some meetings, but we've got a semester, so we've got enough time.
So this is it. I mean, we can have the proposal, these are the things, this is how we'd like to do it, and that's it. And then, or whatever. And not that that's it, but it doesn't
Is
have
that
to
not
be.
possible? Am I missing something?
Yeah, no, I just don't know because I haven't been through the process.
Yeah,
Whatever, I
yeah.
didn't know.
Well, certainly the numbers would have to be embedded by somebody. I'm sure that's not going to fly very well. The scheduling, I mean, we can schedule however we want to schedule it, so I don't see that would be a problem either. We haven't gotten to summer, we're just at summer scheduling now, so that would be possible. So far, I haven't seen anything that's going to take any major mountains to be moved. Now, you might have something else you got to throw out there, that's fine, but I mean, at this point, I don't see anything that's going to require mountains.
Just ensuring that they have enough time to plan for the, if they want to change the curriculum with the thematic approach
Yeah.
or the professional learning.
Well, those were just my suggestions. I didn't. Those
I
are
like
not
them.
necessary.
Yeah.
I put them on because I like them too, but they haven't grabbed them, so
Oh,
they're
okay.
the faculty. We're just teens. No, seriously, I mean, this is a curricular issue. It is not a deanly issue. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think
I think
having
it's-
a thematic thing
yeah.
sounds great, you know.
I think it should be up to the discretion of the instructors, and I think that
That
would
is
But
the
they would be
required.
open to
unifying
it.
component.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's.
I just do want to put out there,
suggestion.
if the instructor is in favor of that, to offer them some time to do that planning,
Yes,
because it is a
yes.
special bridge program, so that's something we have to think about ahead of time as administrators, our piece, right? But if you would like to do that, then yes, we should kind of carve out some time and hopefully have some funding for that too, because they're developing the model.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we need to make sure that, you know, it isn't somebody who's just going to say, I've taught 104 before, I can just do it again.
Right.
You know,
Just
they
something
have
new.
to understand that this is going to be done. It's the same curriculum. We don't change that, but we have different expectations because we want to make sure that these students, not only they succeed in this class, but we want to make sure that they continue on, that they have the skills, not just the English skills, not just the academic skills, but the social skills, the study skills, all kinds of skills to be able to succeed for the next 2 years, not just a suggestion. No, thank you. Your input has been very helpful. If you think of anything else, just let me know.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll send it later.
Thank you, Julie.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
So is there anything else that we want to?
That was the other thing which maybe don't happen that much in the summertime, but you know, just thinking about how to help the students, you know, get into the college experience, like being introduced to clubs. But I think that the clubs maybe don't happen in the summer. That's the problem with that, right?
Yeah, I don't think they meet in the summer.
Yeah.
Could they make their own club? Could they have club time? We're structuring their day.
Yeah.
We are structuring their day. So when I said co-curricular, that would be an example of a
Yeah.
co-curricular. You know, we can have a club where we do a poetry festival at the end, or we do a, you know, whatever, a debate at the end, or whatever it is. We certainly could do that, or we bring in some authors for them, or whatever they want as a club. So we could do that. Let's not discount it. Put it on our list. And again, this is not going to be, you know, we're brainstorming.
Are they going on field trips?
Yeah,
That was
that was
something
mentioned.
We
mentioned
could.
Yeah.
before.
We could.
Okay.
Just because it's mentioned doesn't
Yeah.
mean we're integrating it. The only thing that I'm going to say is the things that you folks have asked for today. It's just because I mentioned them or somebody else mentioned them doesn't mean we're doing it. So say it today if you want it.
Oh, I thought field trips was a co-curricular thing.
Could
That's
be.
the word.
Yeah.
Thinking could be very helpful. Yeah. I mean, I feel like both on-campus and off-campus field trips.
Yes.
Both.
Yes. Maybe even to some four-year universities. And
Oh,
maybe that could be a
yeah.
counseling component. A transfer workshop, like here's your end
Yeah.
goal,
Yeah,
motivating
yeah.
students.
Yeah, that's great.
I love it. We don't have to do all of this, just as long as we've got it out there on paper.
Yeah,
so
I
then
mean,
we can
I feel
come
like the
through and-
more ideas, the better, because like
Yeah,
probably the individual instructor won't be able to do everything, but to have the most options and to figure out the ones that would integrate into the curricular part best. Yeah. It's terrible because it's sounding sort of appealing. I'm trying to like, I'm not gonna do it, not this summer. Maybe next summer.
This is where I go, maybe I'll quit and come back as a faculty. And of course, I can't sound like I have an MSA in English. I would have one in ESL, but not, I would have to go equivalency route for English and possibly Spanish. I would not be able to get one in English because of my degree being in linguistics, not in English. You have to have at least one degree in English. So even though I've taught English, I would not be able to, it would take a very liberal faculty, unlike ours. No, because ours, I remember somebody saying to me, but they don't have Shakespeare. I was like, they teach 3:30. But you know, our faculty wants very much a very traditional background. And that's fine. That's the choice. Other faculties in other schools I know have accepted linguistics backgrounds, but not universal. Not gonna happen. Not to mention you probably don't want to work next to your own. Okay. Anything else that you would like to see, regardless of whether it fits on here or not? Anything else that you think would be valuable to help these students be successful? Anything. Doesn't have to be what's on this paper.
Do we have a page on our website dedicated to
No.
Because I looked at other community colleges that they have at least something on their
Yeah.
BBC
I
website.
love it.
Yeah.
Important.
Definitely.
This is where it's so important to get, you know, our adjuncts are so important because they do teach in other places and, you know, you two have it for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got people who are out there constantly and watching. So, yeah.
I thought maybe I had seen something, but I may have just fantasized that.
No, we can make sure.
Yeah.
And again, the other rule of thumb is, oh boy. She's ready for tenure. She lives, drinks, sleeps, eats, and dreams. BBC, yes, I love it.
Exactly next year.
We've done that to Eliza in 2 years. Is this your third year already? Is this just your second year? Oh my gosh, it seems like you've been with us forever. Well, you have, but
Will you be the coordinator?
No.
Do we have a coordinator for the summer break?
We do not. Right now, I think if anybody's the coordinator, it'd be Adriana, because she's coming as student body. But let's see if we can identify that person. I'll just carry it in the English department. I'm concerned that, they kept saying, yeah, we'll have an English class and then we'll have a lab and that's what we'll have. I was like, we already have that. So and that's why I come to you and say, how do we make it different? Because we already have that, and so we need something that looks different, feels different, and that, we're basically experimenting to see what's going to work to keep students in school. Because we know that community colleges in general have a huge dropout rate. 50-60% don't make it through, maybe 70% of school. Very, very serious. Now, part of the problem is the way they're counted, because some people never plan to go through. I'm taking immigration law right now. I'm being counted as a failure. I don't have an ed plan. I haven't been assessed. And I'm not going to get a certificate or a degree. I am a failure for UBC.
What? I had no idea.
Move the odds wrong.
I don't want to know this. Please.
Are you taking that class here?
Yeah.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, I'm taking it for fun, but see, there's no place for that on the application, so that I get separated out from the other students who are seeking a degree. And so, because of the fact that I'm not going to achieve what the state perceives as what I seek, then I become a failure for UBC.
Yeah,
And that's
the problem.
a shame. We do the same thing with the with the
And that
ESL
goes on
students.
that goes on our reports.
Correct.
Oh my gosh.
Correct. Now, there's always going to be some, but there are many of us, I think, who are floating out, people for the villages who might want to just take the class
Yeah,
for fun.
yeah. I was just talking to while the students were evaluating me, I was talking to somebody who was going into the pronunciation class, and she was like, it's better to be here than an clearly older person coming back to school because it's boring to just be at home.
Yeah.
So we need a way of
category.
We need a way of separating those out. I just had that conversation with Lana because I went to her 322 class, and I've been told since I've been here, since the day I got here, that 312 is where the break occurs. That we start losing students, Virginia 312 because it becomes very academic. It was never brought home to me as clearly as it was today, because I had just visited Emily's 312 class last week, and then just a week later, the 322 class, which feeds into the 312. And from here to here is like a world of difference. Some of those students are silly, they're not interested in school, they're just there to hang out with their friends. At 322 level, at 312 level, my goodness, they were so academically oriented, so knowledgeable about grammar. And so I drew a picture while I was sitting there of some of the alternatives that we can have. We could have another track for students. Not that we're tracking them, but if they choose not to go on to 312 because they really are not interested in writing essays, then they should be able to go on to something else, maybe non-credit, maybe credit, but some other opportunity. We can have a strand that allows students to speed up if that's what they're interested in. There's so many things. We could have an English for special purposes for them. We could have different kinds of classes for those who really don't intend to go on. And we're again saying, well, they could repeat the class. Yeah, but their goal isn't that. Their goal isn't to go on to 312 in the first place. Many of them, probably the majority of them, drop out right there between 322 and 312.
Those are ESL?
They're
The
ESL, yeah.
322 is the 341 or no? Or it
No,
doesn't
it's
lie?
further down.
Oh, I see.
Further down, because
312 is the
312 would be the equivalent of 341. Because 302 is 330 and 91 is 104. So the 312 would be the equivalent of 341.
I see.
Although we never really paired
Yes,
them at
right.
that low level.
Yeah.
And the 322 is even
Before
below that.
Yeah.
So some of these people, I mean, there were some young people in that class who very clearly are headed to college. There's no question about it. But there were some older students who are, good in grammar and everything, and their English is good enough. But it's maybe not ever going to get close enough, or they really don't have that interest. They're not, the class is not academic in any way, and then boom, all of a sudden 312, academic, we're preparing you for college, and that there's no transition. Maybe we need to stick in an extra 316, put 316 right there to to help in 316 is the grammar for writers or something like that. Give them that grammar class in between to help them get to 312 if they're not really ready, because some of those students there's so many possibilities. But we've just been throwing them from here to here, and there's this huge gap, and they just fall right into the chasm. So, I think, getting our minds wrapped around how we're getting them from here to here, I think is very valuable, and that's what the Guide Pathways work is all about. So, anything else that you would like to see in this program? It'll be food. Food is a good thing, too. Not gourmet food, but food. Anything else that you feel like would need to go into the program in general, because that would inform the other meeting, or into the English class per se, either way.
Very good start. Yeah, very good
I think we
start.
have full plate.
I think so too. I think that the next thing that we'll do is I will bring this back to the other team, see if we can at some point integrate it, because this is going to be just the working team for English, but there's a working team looking at the whole thing, and so they'll look at some of these bigger picture items that we won't necessarily have to take care of, but we'll stay on top of them so that we know they're getting done. And then we'll start looking at how we're going to build that class. If we're going to have thematic units, can we put together some for people so that way, and pay you to do that, not just, right now you're doing freebies, I know that, but, pay you to do some development of thematic units, which might be integrated not just in the summer, but any other time also. Anything that we learn in the summer, if it works, we can put it out there for other semesters for people to take or not take. We're not going to force it on people, but a lot of the newbies come in and it's all they can do to wrap their brain around what they have to teach.
Yeah.
But we can offer them something more, then they might move on to it or not. We're just going to force them.
So I guess the one last thing, and then I do need
Please.
to go to some other things, is that we talked about the tutor, kind of matching the tutor and the instructor, but I think with the counselor also should, I don't know, there should be some discussion or coordination or work together time for the counselor and the instructor, right? So that they know each other and can talk, curriculum development or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is going to be a teamed approach. If we're going to be teamed, you better be a team before, we could say we're a team, but it takes a little time.
Anyway, sounds very cool.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you
I
very
feel like
much.
we accomplished a lot today. I'm not going to set another date because this will, until it goes back to the other group, it doesn't make sense to do that. I will take this, write it up, send it out so that the people who aren't here might want to add to it.
Yeah,
Modify
that's
it,
great.
subtract it,
Yeah, that's
whatever, because we want their input as well. If you think of anything in the next week or so, please add it in. This is a dynamic process. It is not, we're done with that. Dynamic, so we'll continue to work on it. Thank you so much. What a great group. Everybody said that, by the way, Adriana, and
Oh,
she
wow.
was so impressed by this group last time.
Cheers.
All right.
This is what